What's going on, guys? This is the Illegal Defense. We're going to jump into it. First off, we have some college football that we're going to get into. A lot of big games. We're going to start off with the biggest game of the year so far in this Tennessee and Alabama game.
Yeah, and this one, game of the year type of, I would say not game of the year hype, but still some pretty big hype coming into this one. Only a 9 point spread for as Alabama as the favorite going into Knoxville, a Tennessee team that carrying over their you know progression and um, putting up big numbers and things like that, have it rolling, showing consistency really since mid last year. And yeah, this Tennessee team, man, they were ready. Their stadium was rocking.
Yeah, that
Um,
stadium was crazy.
it was just a great game, top to bottom. They Alabama comes in there, undefeated. Tennessee's undefeated going into this, and it lived up to the hype. A number 3 versus number 6 matchup. High scoring game. Uh, both teams putting up points. We saw some defense at times. We saw some teams, be effective running the ball, throwing the
Throwing
ball.
the ball
We
for
saw we
sure.
saw a little bit of everything in a tight game that turns out to be a walk off field goal at the end for Tennessee,
Yeah.
52-49. And
What a clutch drive by Hendon. You
yeah,
know, that was there is a lot of moments in that game where you just seen like all the intangibles of an NFL prospect as far as like what you would want from your quarterback. And I think Hendon Hooker showed that. Obviously Bryce Young, he picked up right where he left off as. It didn't really look like he lost much of his step, which it was good that they had him. But again, I think he got outplayed, and then on top of it, it's like that environment to play in that, and to play in that in a game that you're coming back from an injury, it's kind of like very shocking. So
yeah, definitely. The whole home field advantage certainly showed up for Tennessee. And their team, look, that was a huge rivalry for many years that just really kind of went by the wayside because Alabama was just dominating teams and dominating Tennessee for years, where Tennessee kind of fell off and was in the dark ages, so to speak. And yeah, they get a huge win after years. Seeing the people talking and stats all over the place. Last time Tennessee beat Bama was before the iPhone came out.
that's crazy.
So yeah, just a crazy game. Great outcome for Tennessee. They celebrated hard. We saw
The whole goalpost was literally outside. That was crazy. The entire goalpost was.
yeah, they stormed the field, ripped the whole goalpost out. Goalpost ends up in the river. I mean, look, what a time to be in Knoxville. They what a great night. It kind of reminds you of like that App State victory earlier, and
Nah.
really just shows, look, that game showed everything what's good about college football: the high scoring,
Yeah,
the way
the
the
environment
offenses goes,
is.
the great environment, the field
I'm
storming, the
sure, like,
celebrations after.
yeah, I'm sure after the celebrations are probably crazy in Tennessee.
Yeah, there's no place on the world that partied harder
Right,
than
then Tennessee, because it
yeah.
was like a national champion. You just knocked off Bama
Uh,
and Nick Saban at that. It's like,
and that's a huge rivalry that they've been just losing and losing and losing, and a lot
right,
of people don't remember how big and how important that rivalry was. And for game day to go there,
right.
Peyton Manning in the house, and
That for Peyton to see that, it's probably
yeah,
just crazy,
yeah,
crazy. It's probably nostalgic for him as well, just because the whole obviously he played there. So,
yeah.
but again, it was a great game. It was nice to see two quarterbacks really go at it. I like Hendon Hooker a lot. I think he's good, and I can see him being. I don't know if he would be like a superstar in the NFL, but I can see him being a solid quarterback in the NFL so far.
Yeah, and he certainly knows that offense front to back. I mean, look, he benefits a lot from that explosive offense that Josh Heupel runs, and he runs it to perfection. I mean, he puts up crazy numbers in it, and certainly takes advantage. Has the arm and the arm talent to make all the throws. And surprisingly enough, Tennessee comes in this game, and Alabama, threw more passing yards, 455 to 385. So and Alabama, we talked about this when they played Arkansas. Arkansas was a huge rushing team. Alabama had one of the best rushing defenses.
Right.
Tennessee comes in and runs for 182 yards on them, running for more yards than Bama in this game, right? So if you would have thought before the game that Tennessee was going to run for more yards than Bama, I mean that'll probably tell you all you need to know with the way Alabama's been able to run the ball and kind of lean on Jahmyr Gibbs as kind of their number one option this year. So
Right.
yeah, but look, like we said, a great game of the year type of game here. Something that we'll be talking about for a while and really years to come, right? A rivalry game like that finishes that way. Every year when Bama and Tennessee play each other, they're going to be
That's gonna be
flashing back to
something.
this game for
Yeah, for
years.
sure.
So yeah, amazing game, and like we said, it kind of embodies everything great about college football here. We'll move on to another game. This one in the Big Ten, another top 10 matchup with two teams. And we had number 10 Penn State go into Ann Arbor, Michigan and play the Wolverines. This had a pretty decent amount of hype around this game. Kind of the first, Big Ten matchup of the year. And it was a surprisingly close game early on, and not surprising by thinking either team couldn't keep up with each other, but really
Right.
because Michigan kind of was dominating early, and it was still a tight game. And so really, but after the half there, Michigan kind of blew the doors off and ran away with it. They committed to the run.
Right.
Penn State couldn't do anything
Yeah,
to stop it.
Michigan, I believe they had two rushers over 100 yards, and it's kind of like when you have that, we always go back to having a strong run offense and how much that can set up for you and how much that can create for your team in general, even outside of offense. If you're running the ball out, your defense is not going to be on the field as much. So that gives your defense a lot more time to get some rest, keep their legs fresh and not have so much time on the field. But again, Michigan, obviously, they just ran all over Penn State. It seemed like Penn State couldn't stop a nosebleed. I don't know what was going on,
They
but
I don't know what's going on with James Franklin and that staff. I mean, I've seen some people like calling for his job, which I kind of don't really agree with. I think Franklin's a pretty good coach. But in this game, I mean, Michigan ran for 418 yards against them.
that's great. Those are passing yards.
418 yards rushing, and Penn State didn't really make the adjustments to even try to stop them. You would think at some point, like, just put 8 men in the box.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just put 8 men in the box and just make them beat you by throwing. And they never really did that.
No.
And they just let Michigan run wild all over them in a huge matchup that is important when you have goals to win the Big Ten and go to a Big Ten championship game, and you take a loss to Michigan. I mean, it's kind of good luck now to Penn State because you still got to play Ohio State and you got to play other Big Ten teams
Right.
that are decent.
Michigan State that could possibly knock them off.
Yeah, so tough loss for Penn State. I mean, both teams came into this undefeated. That loss might be all that Penn State needed to get completely set back and
Yeah,
out of the running for things. So
right. I don't think playoffs are in there.
yeah, and now when you look at Michigan, on the other hand, I mean, look, you never want to look past opponents, and we see people upset people all the time, but Michigan will be favored in every game for the rest of the year, besides the last game of the year against Ohio State,
obviously.
which we don't know what happens from now to then, but most likely Ohio State's going to be favored the way things are going. But so now Michigan is looking at a situation where they could potentially be either a one-loss or no-loss team after the regular season, here for after getting this win. So it's a huge difference and a huge turn of events for both of these teams in opposite directions. This point in like around midway through the college football season.
It was a matchup that we've been wanting to see though, because
Yeah.
it's like again the Big Ten. They're like right now we're in the stages of the season where it's like there is the only test Ohio State really had was Notre Dame. The only real test that Michigan had is this game right now against Penn State. And even Penn State, and it's kind of like we want to see more of these matchups, and I think that's also a great thing that we have USC coming into the Big Ten in a few years. So it's kind of like that would be able to mix things up a little bit more as far as like we're not going to have to watch games that aren't really matter, like games don't really matter till like later on in the year, or maybe
Yeah,
like
yeah. It'll be great to have
so
that new blood to diversify things, get some
right.
bigger matchups.
And you know, I think Michigan is, I don't know if they sustain this for the rest of the season. But obviously they're in the playoff rankings now. I think they're the fourth team right now. But again, yeah, Penn State could just forget about all the playoff hopes right now. I mean, even if they win out, I really don't even. I mean, that's a slight chance as well because they have to face Ohio State. So
Yeah. Well, we'll transition. We talked about USC coming to the Big Ten. Another matchup we had here was number 7 USC going into number 20 Utah. This was probably the first real tough test for this USC team led by Lincoln Riley
Caleb Williams.
and Caleb Williams, and they go into Utah. This is turns into a shootout between both teams. Utah, they come out and they are able to get the job done at home, 43-42 win, and yeah, huge win for Utah. I mean, they had just lost to UCLA last week. That was a game I thought they were going to be able to win. UCLA, to their credit, came out and got the job done against them, but they could have easily kind of free falled here and maybe took their foot off the gas or not played as hard and given up, but they fought hard.
Yeah, they put on a show for sure.
Yeah, they put on a show, and look, people talk about Caleb Williams all the time. Cam Rising is another quarterback that look, this class of quarterbacks. We talked about Hendon Hooker. We got Bryce Young, we got C.J. Stroud,
Right.
Caleb Williams, who's really Caleb Williams is a next year guy, but still, some of these quarterbacks in college football, there's a lot of guys right now, and Cam Rising, if you follow the sport enough, he's one of them, but. That was certainly a statement game right there.
Yeah, what I liked about that game was he showed a lot of times we don't get to see resiliency in these kinds of games only because games could either be blowouts or they could be determined more so of like what the strength of the offense is. So if they're running the ball well, all right, we're gonna just give the ball to the running back, let him go to work. But Cam Rising, he had complete control of the game towards the end. He was making great throws. I mean, he was accountable for 5 touchdowns. To have 5 touchdowns, that's not easy to do. I mean, in any type of football game.
Yeah, and he threw himself, I believe it was 415 yards. Yeah, he threw for 415 yards there. So definitely like I said, a statement game. Sure. He really put up some great numbers. He kind of, everybody's watching with a big matchup like that. That's probably their biggest matchup on their schedule. I mean, you could argue Oregon as well, but between those two teams, those their two biggest matchup. He's on the national stage here. He comes out, he slings it, and they take down, the explosive offense in USC and what they're trying to build. And they were able to pull out that tough win at home. So, we could move on to kind of discuss some of the current favorites to win the playoffs here. Right now, I believe Georgia and Ohio State are both tied around like plus 180 odds to kind of win the national championship.
Right.
Following that, there's a little bit of a drop off, and you have Tennessee, and then obviously Alabama,
Right. Michigan.
further back Michigan and Clemson, and that's kind of like the top six for right now. Obviously, a lot more football to be played, but out of this group, I mean, we kind of talked about how big that win was for Michigan. Ohio State had the bye week last week. They come back against Iowa. Looking down the road, we obviously have that clash at the end of the year between those two teams. But yeah, I mean, besides the Big Ten, those three SEC teams, Bama already has the loss to Tennessee. We're gonna, probably see two out of those three teams meet in that SEC championship game, regardless of what else happens. And then you have Clemson there. Clemson, quietly is,
They're winning games.
they're not. And we talked about this last week. DJ is not performing up to the level if you want to put him in the same conversation as C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young, who he's kind of always been linked with his career, just because of their recruiting ranks coming out of high school. But otherwise, he's definitely shown improvement this year, and they're doing enough to put teams away and get their wins. And out of all these teams, they have the clearest path there. Now, once they get there, whether they win it is another thing. But
right, I think they'll be able to sustain a winning season. I think not the problem, but DJ, he's not playing up to the standards that we have for him, as far as like him being up to like the CJ Strouds and the Bryce Youngs. But we also have to realize like how good CJ Stroud and Bryce Young is. Mm-hmm. And DJ's playing good football right now. He's not playing phenomenal football, but he's playing good enough football. And as long as like the season goes on, I think we'll obviously see him progress, and hopefully he picks it up to that status of the CJ Strouds, the Bryce Youngs, the Hendon Hooker. And it's kind of like with him, he has all the weapons. It's not like he doesn't have the weapons. It's just more so like he just needs to, I don't know what it is, but hopefully further down in the season, he's able to pick it up and get things going, because Clemson, I think they can be a playoff team. And when they get into the playoffs, there's no real, like, it's such a toss up. Like, you never know what can happen with Clemson. So, especially since Dabo is he's obviously a phenomenal coach, and he's got it done in the past. So,
yeah, for sure. And then obviously, Tennessee, who we talked a lot about, they'll have their offense rolling. Georgia, they've been up and down offensively, but they've been doing enough. I mean, I thought Vanderbilt was going to be able to put up a fight against them, and Georgia just took them out. Their offense came back, and they were rolling again. So, definitely will be some interesting things to watch as we move on in the year. What we can talk about next is, some Coach of the Year candidates. Halfway through the year now, we've talked about Heisman guys. We talked about, some of the best offenses and all these other things, but some guys, for Coach of the Year so far, I mean, there's some obvious names, right? Lance Leipold of Kansas coming out of nowhere, really turning around that program that was, always one of the bottom teams in the Big 12.
Right. Now has him competing, so.
Yeah, you have Mike Norvell out of Florida State, really, taking a team that much wasn't expected out of them this year, and they've been fighting, and I mean, they just lost against Clemson, but they hung around in that game, gave themselves a shot to win that. Mike Elko at Duke. Duke was a surprise, kind of in the same vein as Kansas. Not a very good team. Really put together just a good coaching staff and decent game plan on both sides of the ball for them to compete. So certainly a good job by him. How about Syracuse? Syracuse coach
is having a hell of a season.
Yeah, Dino Babers really taking that ACC by storm. really a surprise team, kind of came out of nowhere. They kind of somehow under the radar though, right? Like you hear a lot of people talk about Kansas, you hear a lot of people talk about Duke just because they've been so bad.
Yeah,
Syracuse has been a team that's been bad, but they have some years
they
where
have
they're
years where
up.
they're like
So
mediocre.
it's almost like, some people are maybe overlooking them a bit, or maybe not as surprised, but still you got to give credit where credit is due. Certainly a great job by that Syracuse program to make advances and do better. And they're packing out that Carrier Dome now, which is always fun to see. And
Yeah, that dome
um,
is pretty hard to. It's hard to play in any dome. So
mhm.
and that dome is a little bit smaller, so it's just like that environment's just crazy in general.
Yeah, and then we have some of the bigger name guys, Lincoln Riley and USC. I mean, obviously he picked up their first loss, but um, they're certainly ahead of schedule at this point with how they've been playing.
Right.
Josh Heupel, who we talked about in Tennessee, really kind of took that momentum from last year. Now with the big win at Bama, I'm sure he's shooting up people's Coach of the Year rankings, and tough games to go still in the SEC, but I think they're still going to finish as one of the top teams and maybe make that SEC championship game. And then we have Chip Kelly out in UCLA. He's come in and really kind of turned around that UCLA program that hasn't been very good lately.
Right.
They retained their quarterback from last year, Dorian Thompson Robinson. Um,
He's solid. And
yeah,
he's somebody that's not getting enough notoriety from the media at all. And he's gonna get drafted. He's a first rounder for sure.
yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know if he's going to be a first rounder because of the how many quarterbacks there are, and that there's going to be the Bryce Youngs and C.J. Strouds are just kind of guaranteed it.
Right.
Now you're talking about Hendon Hooker, you're talking about Cam
Cam
Rising,
Rising.
you're still
Yeah.
talking about Will Levis, you're still talking about
Anthony Richardson
Anthony
possibly.
Richardson in Florida. I mean, look, there's so many guys. And the knock against guys like Dorian Thompson Robinson is, and always has been, about when they're running like that maybe their passing isn't up to par. Now, whether that's fair or not is a whole nother issue.
Right.
But yeah, I'm a fan of the
As a
guy.
passer, I think he's a great passer.
I'm a fan of the guy. And he's certainly helping his draft stock. So good for him. Either way, he should be a guy who should get an opportunity to get to an NFL training camp,
Right.
be able to be tested, and hopefully get an opportunity to play and see what he's really got against some NFL competition. Looking ahead to next week, we'll preview some games. We'll start with a SEC matchup, two ranked teams, number 24 Mississippi State going against number 6 Alabama. Alabama was they kind of flip-flopped here. Last week Bama was 3, Tennessee 6. Now Tennessee 3, Bama number 6 after that loss. But yeah, Mississippi State comes into Alabama. Alabama favored by 21 and a half points here. This is underrated Mississippi State team. They have an offense. I don't want to compare them to Tennessee per se,
Right.
but yeah, still a super explosive air raid offense. They're gonna sling it. They're gonna put up tons of yards on you in the air, and they go into Bama. Bama's gonna be. They're pissed. They
Yeah,
lost.
Bama's out for blood now that they got a loss middle of the season too at that.
Yeah, but so Bama has that loss, but Bama, they haven't really looked like the machine that they've been. Now it's like it's funny how as soon as a team like Bama loses, all these reports come out that maybe Nick Saban isn't gonna finish his contract. He doesn't have the same control over the players, blah blah. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right, how much of this is real and how much of this is just people
It's
waiting
just like
for the the king to misstep,
yeah.
So but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out as far as this game goes. This is a tough one for Bama. They're kind of down. I'm sure Nick Saban's gonna have his guys ready to go and stuff like that. I think Bama's going to win this game. I don't know if they're going to cover 21 and a half points. They kind of seem to be playing some closer games as of late and not really,
Blowing out
yeah,
teams
not
the way
not
that they
blowing out
usually do.
teams like they usually do and really just getting on them early and then stepping on their neck. So, uh, yeah, but this will could be a fun one. And I mean, I wouldn't predict the Mississippi State win here, but who knows? Maybe they take
Imagine.
advantage and catch them when they're down. 2 losses for Bama this soon. That would be
That's
something.
I think that's completely out of the
Look,
playoffs.
look. If that happens, I think man, that'll be a big shocker to a lot of teams, and maybe kind of signal the change of some things coming in. As far as Nick Saban and
And
continuing to
even
coach. He might. I don't know. He doesn't seem like a quitter, obviously, but
right.
for it might signal that maybe some of these other reports are true, and um,
Well,
yeah.
I think it's the control factor is a little bit based more on like what's what control like does he really have like with everybody with these NILs now, and
Hmm.
now these players are making money, and it's like you can't it's that's the whole thing with the NFL. It's like you can't be a college coach, go to the NFL and think you're going to tell grown men who make more than you how to go about their job, how to go about their professionalism and things like that. Like so maybe that's a challenge. I don't know. I don't know if that would be a challenge for Nick Saban, being that his program is so well oiled. But again, it's just like you said. There might be some truth to it if they do lose, but I think we'll see on Saturday what the end result is of that game.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. On to the West Coast, we got a big Pac-12 matchup. Number 9 UCLA going into number 10 Oregon. Top 10 ranked matchup. Should be a fun one. Um, Both of these teams have been playing very well as of late. Oregon, obviously, they got demolished by Georgia first game of the year, but since then have kind of bounced back pretty strong and um, shown they could both play offense and defense. UCLA looking like a pretty complete team so far. We talked, a lot about their quarterback and, their coach Chip Kelly really getting their program together. And yeah, this one, a huge Pac-12 matchup, probably one of the top 3 matchups of the year for the conference. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see will UCLA, one of the few undefeated teams left in college football, will they be able to come out with that win? I think if UCLA comes out with that win, they might be, they're probably
Top five.
they're going to be one of the favorites to win the conference. Obviously, USC has one loss as well, but yeah, UCLA, they'll be closing in. I don't know if they get to top 5, but if not, they'll be right outside of it. And certainly in the hunt for a playoff. We also talked about earlier about when USC comes to the Big Ten. Look, if Chip Kelly is still in UCLA and they have their program running like this,
He may be running the whole Pac-12.
UCLA might be. UCLA is coming over too, and they were kind
Oh,
of the
are they?
throwing.
Oh,
They were
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
like the
right.
throwing team. Nobody really cared. They were coming over as a pair, but yeah, would be nice to have a strong UCLA team in the mix as well. Really help the conference be a lot stronger and a lot more fun matchups to go over there. We will move on to another ranked matchup. This is a Big 12 matchup between number 20 Texas and number 11 Oklahoma State. Texas favored in this one by 6. This line moved a bit. I saw it at 5 to kind of start off the week. But yeah, Oklahoma State, you know, comes off a tough loss against TCU last week.
Right.
Uh, where TCU kind of surged late and got the win to end the game. Texas is a team that, we saw their potential in that Alabama game early before Quinn Ewers got hurt, and it's a game that Alabama ultimately won close. Now they have Ewers back. They've kind of have their offense rolling. They're explosive again. They look like, one of the stronger teams in the league. If they didn't, drop those few games, they'd probably be much higher ranked.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, they go to Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's a tough place to play. They play both sides of the ball, that team, and
Oklahoma State's loaded too at that. So
yeah,
there's offensively they're a very strong team, and Texas. I mean, they showed that they can slow down offenses, just like you said with the whole Alabama game. But again, they would have to put up points, and Quinn Ewers would have to play stellar football at that. So I mean, well, with the whole situation and being at Oklahoma State, that obviously is gonna favor Oklahoma State. But I think I have Texas. I think I have Texas winning this game. But again, obviously Oklahoma's at home, so it's like
yeah. I think I'm kind of with you on this one. I think Oklahoma State is a solid team. They're a well coached team by Mike Gundy, but yeah, the way Texas plays when Ewers is there this year, it's something else, and they've completely changed the narrative. I mean, going into the year, when Ewers was announced the starter, it was like being talked about behind the scenes that Hudson Card was playing like the better quarterback and this and that. And there was thoughts that, maybe they might start slow with Ewers because, he hasn't really got a grip of it. He should be a true freshman if he didn't go to Ohio State last year. But yeah, I mean, he's been lights out pretty much since he's been playing. And that offense, it's probably going to be something, too explosive for Oklahoma State to contain here, even on the road. So, yeah, I agree. I like Texas in this game as well. We will go into some best bets for this week. We got about 4 of them on the slate here. We talked about, a few of these games already, but we'll start off with that Mississippi State versus Alabama. Like I mentioned before, I like Alabama to win this game, but I like Mississippi State to cover 21.5 points. That means they could, lose by 3 touchdowns and they still cover by a half a point. And yeah, I think Mississippi State's an underrated team. I think they'll find a way to put up enough points to keep up enough with Alabama to cover that spread.
Yeah, I think they'll be able to too. And Alabama again, they're coming off of a loss, and I think with Alabama, we haven't really seen them like gain their confidence, or I don't know what it is, what's going on with them.
Yeah, I mean, in previous years, I probably would never take someone to cover the spread against Bama after coming off a loss, knowing how Saban is going to really have his team ready to go. But they just don't seem to have the same aura about this team.
I think that's
this year.
what it is.
And yeah, it's kind of clear to see they struggled enough early on this year, in ways where they either haven't or wouldn't struggle in all those many ways in previous years. So, yeah, tough matchup here, and like I said, I think Mississippi State will find a way to cover here. We have that UCLA Oregon game. That's a huge matchup for the Pac-12, like we talked about. I like UCLA +6 here. Oregon's been playing great. UCLA, I guess, playing greater, right?
Yeah. Right.
That's kind of what it comes down to. They're on the road, but you're telling me you giving me 6 points so they could lose this game, by a couple points,
and field goal maybe,
and they'll still cover. So I'll take my chances with that. I like what UCLA has been doing, and when it comes down to it, I think I trust Dorian Thompson-Robinson more than
Bo Nix.
Yeah, we've shown some highs and lows and inconsistency of Bo Nix this year and throughout his career, really. So yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is a UCLA team that'll find a way to. I actually like them to win here, but even if they don't and things go not their way at some point, I think they'll cover 6 points. Cincinnati, number 21 Cincinnati goes on the road to SMU. Cincinnati's been pretty solid this year. They're only 3-point favorite. I like them to cover by 3 points. I think they're going to win this game, and I think 3 points is
Yeah,
more
that's
than a
not too
fair
much.
point spread for them to go on a road against the SMU team. That's I believe they're like 3-3 at this point.
Yeah, that's not the
And
greatest.
look, we see upsets all the time. You know, I I just saw Coastal Carolina lose to Old Dominion.
Yeah, that's
That
insane.
I rolled them into a parlay and that cooked it. So yeah, so we see these kind of things happen. SMU is a team certainly capable of that. But yeah, I do like Cincinnati to win this game, come out and cover that spread here. And lastly, we have West Virginia going into Texas Tech. Texas Tech being favored by 5.5 points. This is a Texas Tech team that we've seen overcome some other teams that are higher ranked and thought to be better of them. When they come in there, they've been able to play pretty well at home. And yeah, West Virginia's kind of been an up and down team. We saw them start out the year against Pitt and lose that game. They've had some other games. They lost against Tennessee. But
They've lost against like respectable
yeah, they've lost
opponents. It's
against
not
respectable
like
opponents. They
right.
played well, but sometimes not good enough. And I think here on the road against a Texas Tech team that could really sling the ball and
They
put
have
up
a
points,
firepower offense.
yeah, I think at home I'll take Texas Tech by 5.5. I think they'll be able to cover that. It might be a close cover. I mean, they might win by 7 or so, but yeah, that'll still be
Yeah,
covered.
that's
I could also, this one also has the potential to be just a runaway win for Texas Tech as well, right? You might, be doing something else, look at the score or flip to this game and a quarter and a half in, they're up by, 14,
15.
21,
Nah.
something like that, 2, 3 touchdowns. So, yeah, they certainly have that capabilities as well. But, yeah, that'll do it for our college football episode number 7. And we'll see you guys back here next week.